Go. Last week we left off at a point where we had basically analyzed how do you isolate a sampling of a color palette from an existing source. So moving forward into our actual project, we're going to do that again. You feel free to use the one that you already have, but I'm hoping that you're going to find an image that relates to particularly something to do with what we're going to design. But we'll talk about that later. Anyway, so this right here, right? So basically what we're going to start to develop is a series of, and I mentioned this to you before, right? The idea of an algorithmic relationship between design elements, right? And we're going to very, very simply start to simulate that here. And it's going to have, it's going to take the form of really a purely graphic exercise. And then we're going to adapt that into an architectural element. And I'm still fleshing out the details, but it'll be something like a facade exercise. Okay, so bear with me here. It's going to feel a little weird. You may not understand exactly how it applies today, and today's Thursday, so you might not even understand how it applies even by Tuesday. But I guarantee you by the time that we're done this assignment, you're going to understand quite a bit about how abstract ideas relate to the design process. Okay, are you willing to bear with me on this?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do some graphic design. I mentioned that we're going to be working in Illustrator, so that's going to be our primary software here today. And really what I want to set us up with is just basically a square graphic composition, and we're going to have two grid systems on it. We're going to have a quarters grid, which basically means you put a center line vertical, center line horizontal, and then we're going to put that thirds grid on it. So go to File, New. And someday it'll load. There it is. Let's see, points. Our renderings, we were doing 1500 by 1500, correct? Let's do 1500 by 1500. It doesn't matter if it's square. And then just hit OK. All right, so then we got to make sure that our rulers are on. So View, Rulers, Show Rulers. And the weird part about this being, let's see if we can switch this to inches. That's better. I think I want to change something. Document setup. Let's go into Edit Artboards. I want this to be, I forgot how to change the DPI in Illustrator now. Let's just make this 15. So 15 by 15. There you go.
What do you have from there?
Yeah. Okay, so click this little button right there.
Okay.
Are you actually in this view yet?
Yeah.
Document setup? Yeah, click this tiny little button right up here. These are your artboard options. So you can switch that to 15 by 15. We'll just go by inches rather than pixels. We can resize it later. Okay. Now, so I mentioned, right, we're going to do thirds and we're going to do halves. So we'll do a vertical one at the 7.5 inch mark. Make sure you're holding Shift. Then we'll do another one at 7.5 horizontally. And then we're going to do one at each of the 5 inch marks. So one there, and one here, and one here. Okay? So that's really it. Okay, this is going to be the basis upon which we're generating our graphic exercise. So I'll just pause and make sure you guys are good to go on that before I continue on. All right. Continuing on, everyone. All right, so we have our guide set up, right? These are going to be the basis upon which we start to generate geometry, okay? And we're going to get a little crazy with some of the things here. So I'm actually going to zoom out away from the board because we're going to have to set up a number of things to get us basically ready to go. And it's going to be kind of like a palette of tools for us to work with. All right. So first things first, I think I probably want to bring in the image. Yeah, I mentioned open it up in Photoshop, but I think if you just bring it into Illustrator, you can use the color picker, and we'll just pick off of that. So what I'll do is navigate to wherever I saved it, if I can find wherever I saved it. Let's see. I need a better system for this. Assignment 9 drop, Kevin sample folder. Okay. Illustrator. And I think this is something I try with pretty much everything nowadays. I'm hoping you can just drop it right in there. Hey, there we go. Perfect. You didn't used to be able to do that, by the way, guys. Back in like the 90s, you had to go to the little file menu and open things up for every single file that you needed to bring into something.
I was about to say, I'm like, when you said I'm starting to do that for everything, so
yeah,
like, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. So anyway, let's get going. One thing that I want to point out to you all as we're getting started with this is that the image that I just referenced and the grids that I put in this composition so far, they are actually objects. Okay, so as such, they happen to exist on a particular layer. So if I select that, some of you might not be able to, but I can, it happens to show up as blue. Okay, but I want to point out that if I make a new layer down here in the Create New Layer button, see how this little thing says red there? If you right-click the object and you say Arrange, Send to Current Layer, that's how you change the layer that it's on, and now my grid, when I select it, shows up as red instead of blue. Okay, you will encounter a condition where you've accidentally put a grid on a wrong layer and you try to hide them. So, you know, it might make sense to just have a layer that you set to like base or something like that, where you just put reference geometry that's not actually part of your image. So I double click the layer there and I renamed it to base and hit OK. These can be locked. You could lock the whole layer and then I can't select them at all, which is nice. I should theoretically still be able to reference the color picker. Maybe not. Yeah, there we go. So even if it's locked, I can still color pick and grab the colors off of it. So that part's kind of nice. But let's get into what we're actually going to do. So here on layer 2, okay, you guys remember the first assignment we did in this class, right?
Yeah.
What was it?
Oh, wait, the first?
Yeah, well, like the first 4 weeks. What did we do?
Learn Rhino. Oh, no, we did the planes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did the planar superimposition project, which some of you did in design. We did it again here. Well, now we're going to do it sort of as a derivation of that, and we're going to look at like very accurately and truly setting up an algorithmic design logic for how systems go together. Okay, so that's what we're going to determine here, and it might feel, you know, too abstract to actually be grounded in reality, but we'll work through that. So this layer 2 is going to be where we're determining or where we're going to basically develop our palette of geometry to work from. Okay, so you as the designer have the opportunity to basically set up a rule set for certain things. Okay, so I have this grid set up, and to me, I see basically a series of different size squares that I could work with, or rectangles, or any combination there. Any combination of ways that I could break this thing down. But again, keeping it super simple, I'm going to work with squares. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is grab my first color, and I'm going to start to develop my square library. Okay, and very, very simply put, I'm just going to drop one square from the bottom right corner to there. I'll do another square, bottom right to middle. Another square, bottom right to there. And I'm making the conscious decision not to do any full bleed or full size or full frame color blocks. So just to kind of start to index these things, I'm going to pull it out to the side and then just kind of leave it as is, right? So essentially, that's going to be my library of blocks. And if you care so much to actually change the colors of that, you can copy and paste it, put it off to the side, and then you can actually grab, let's see, if I select them like this, I should be able to just grab the color picker and select the new color, and that color, and that color, and that color. And it'll change each one. So it's up to you whether or not you want to, in a predetermined way, just do a whole slate of these and put them all the way across, or feel free to just leave one and then individually color pick, basically make a copy, and if that particular one is to be a different color, just grab your color picker and just click on the proper color that it's supposed to be. Okay? That's essentially rule set number 1. Any questions on that? All right. So then the other thing is, so that basically sets up my first logical phrase, right? Or I should call it my first logical set. Okay, so I have square A, square B, square C. The other variables about that set are going to be transparencies. So this is one that I absolutely suggest that you just do ahead of time. Copy and paste this 3 times. And actually, I don't really like the yellow as much. I'm going to switch it to the blue. I'll pick that. Okay. So copy and paste that 3 times, and what we're going to do with this one is actually change the transparency. So I do kind of, I don't quite remember the exact translucencies that we worked with in the first assignment, so I'm just going to kind of create, again, a derivation of that system, and just select each of these, and give them a new transparency here. So the opacity for my second row, I think I'm going to make it 67 for 1/3 transparency, and then the next one I'm going to make it 33. Okay.
What's the second one?
So this is 100. These are 67, and these are 33. Feel free to control these layers however you want. I think what I'm going to do is probably leave them how they're... I'm not sure how I want to control these yet. I might just throw them all on one layer for now. Let's see. Oh, here's an interesting thing that I just recalled. So if I select all 3 of these and I want to change them to a particular layer, you have to deselect the items from that layer, because if one item in your selection is on the same layer you're trying to move it to, it won't allow you to. So if I right-click this and say Arrange, Send to Current Layer, it won't let me. I need to deselect these items, and then I can right-click, Arrange. Oh, it didn't let me. Oh, because it switched my layer. Yeah. There we go. Send to Current Layer. There we go. Okay. So I can call these squares. Yes?
How does it everything, each square is in a different layer? Or
Right now, all those squares are on one layer. I'm not quite sure how I want to control the file yet, so I'm just isolating all squares to one layer. Okay? Any questions so far? Yes?
What was the opacity for the
These are 100. These are 67. These are 33. Okay. So I'm going to stop this video here and then move into more of our linear elements.